to In Dark Places. You're in good hands. Hey, we talk a lot about Art Bell on the show. Me and Jimmy and Tracy, we've talked about Art a pretty good lot. And it was cool that we were able to kind of introduce Art to some of our listeners that may not have heard of him. And our friend Steve was talking about a Midnight in the Desert show that he had listened to that had like a creepy dude call in talking about the future and stuff from like 2015, and it's all coming to pass now. So it's pretty good. But I've been listening to some of the other Midnight in the Desert shows that I missed out on because, you know, you had to pay for Midnight in the Desert, and I was a tightwad. I didn't want to pay for that stuff. So I just remember the old Art Bell from Coast to Coast. Now through the magic of YouTube and places like that, you can hear Midnight in the Desert for free. And I've kind of noticed that Art was a grumpy old man. I don't know what happened. I don't remember him being like that in his Coast to Coast days. So he was a pretty mean old dude, sounds like. He just ruined my dream. We've had some pretty crazy weather going on around here. And here with a little news update is Brandon Fugit.
So today, well, at the time of recording this at least, there was a big gigantic flood that happened. It's like it didn't really wash away like any sort of things like houses and stuff, but like it did like create like mud everywhere and stuff. Like there's this big huge flood, and like the mud goes about like half a foot up to the house. That's how high the flood got. Like there's still mud everywhere from there, and like it actually like changed the color of the road. Like instead of the road just being like a gray color, it like changed it to like a tannish color, like a tan color. Like mud just everywhere. And there was water like all over like around our house, and it looked like this miniature sort of island. It's been raining for like a really long time here and stuff. Like it's been raining for a while now. Like there was a storm, and like it kept raining, and it kept raining after that. It's been like raining for like probably a week now. And like we have like a creek around our backyard, and that creek like rose up while all this raining was happening. It got wider, started tearing apart all sorts of stuff, and it eventually got into the road, and that's how all the mud formed.
Thanks, Brandon. Amazon's new invention could let you speak to the dead, but should it? By Sofia Guaglia. On day 2 of its 2022 Artificial Intelligence Conference, sandwiched in between the reveal of an Alexa-powered home robot called Astro and a presentation from the director of the MIT Space Exploration Initiative, Amazon unveiled something strange. "Can Grandma finish reading me The Wizard of Oz?" a young boy asks as the tech demo begins to play. "Okay," said Alexa in her typically cheery artificial voice. And then, a second later, a different voice emerges from the machine. This one is much more human-sounding, but it's not. It's an AI-generated replication of the kid's dead grandma. Speaking on stage, Amazon Senior Vice President and Head Scientist for Alexa, Rohit Prasada, explained that the voice was generated using less than a minute of recording of the grandma's actual voice. The implication is obvious. "These attributes have become more important in these times of ongoing pandemic, when so many of us have lost someone we love," Prasad said. "While AI can't eliminate the pain of the loss, it can definitely make their memories last. For now, this is just a tech demo. Little else is known about the project except for the fact that Alexa's engineers pulled it off by treating this as a voice conversion task and not a speech generation task. Amazon declined to comment on questions about how this feature works, when it will be rolled out, or who will have access to it. We are unquestionably living in the golden era of AI, where our dreams and science fictions are becoming reality, Prasad said at the conference. But will that technology actually improve our lives, or will it lead to new nightmares? And now here's the Nicolas Cage meltdown of the week. This is Our Haunted World, Chapter 4. And also, this is Jimmy Haunted.
Here's a story from, you guessed it, Birmingham, Alabama. The Sloss Furnaces. Now, I've heard of this before, but didn't really know the story. In the years following the Civil War, Birmingham's Sloss Furnaces became the mecca of pig iron needed for thousands of steel products around the country. Unfortunately, this industrial boom, coupled with the city's seemingly overnight transformation into a metropolis, came at a cost. In the early 1900s, James Slag Wormwood, foreman of the graveyard shift between sunset and sunrise at Sloss Furnaces, led a group of 100 workers who lived in cramped housing on the furnace site, forcing them to take dangerous risks to speed up production. During his reign, 47 workers lost their lives and numerous others lost their ability to work due to horrific accidents, including an explosion that left 6 blind. The rumor is that the workers, fed up with their daunting and dangerous nights, fed slag into the furnace in October of 1906. After his disappearance, workers continuously complained of an unnatural presence in the worksite, and some complained of being pushed from behind or being told by a mysterious voice to get back to work. 3 supervisors were even found unconscious and locked in a small boiler room, only to emerge with stories of a seemingly burned man who shouted at them to push more steel. There have been more than 100 reports of suspected paranormal activity at Sloss Furnaces in Birmingham, and it has even been named one of Fox Paranormal Team's scariest places. Experience the fear for yourself. Apparently there's a website, and you can go visit this location, and it's at 2032nd Street, Birmingham, Alabama.
Woman captures mysterious, shadowy figure in broad daylight, but there's no one there. By Diana Lagajun. Of all the paranormal phenomenon, the most inexplicable might be the appearance of shadow people. These beings are shadows that appear out of nowhere, with no one and nothing around to cast them. Paranormal researchers have a whole host of theories as to what these beings might be: ghosts, guardian spirits, phase slip creatures from another dimension, or even demons. In this video in question, which I'll provide a link for, a woman catches sight of an unexpected and an inexplicable shadow figure. This woman is shocked by the appearance of a humanoid shadow being cast on the wall of a building across the street from her home. The grass and street in front of the shadow are empty and shiny brightly in the sun, so nothing appears to be casting this shape, nor is the top of a light pole shadow stretching across the lawn. She does not seem to have noticed it before, making it unlikely to be a daily phenomenon, nor a painting on the building's wall, as some people have suggested. Unlike other appearances of potential shadow creatures, this apparition is stationary, which does rather point to the more prosaic explanations of the phenomena that our critics put forth in the comments section of the video. For instance, if there is a distant street lamp pole projecting a shadow onto the lawn, the reason it is not visible on the lawn right in front of the wall might be due to the shape of the overgrown blades of grass. Light refraction can work in odd ways. Established in 1832, the iconic Martha Washington Inn and Spa has served many functions throughout its extensive history. During the Civil War, when battles were fought in southwestern Virginia near Abington, the Martha Washington Hotel was temporarily used as a hospital for the wounded. To this day, romantic stories of love between nurses and soldiers still prevail. Yet, that's not all that prevails. According to legend, the Martha Washington Hotel is still visited by ghostly figures today. According to some, the hotel is among the most haunted places in Virginia. One particularly chilling account tells of a Confederate soldier who was shot on the grounds of the hotel. In spite of efforts to clean the bloodstain from this tragic incident, it still appears from time to time. Other guests have noted seeing bizarre phantoms, both human figures and horse figures, appearing and then disappearing in plain sight. Others have heard mysterious sounds, such as violin music playing, without an obvious source. Yet even still, the Martha Washington Hotel is one of the most noteworthy buildings in the region. The allure of a haunting history and possibility of a paranormal encounter only add to the fascination of this accommodation. So the next time you're looking for a trip that promises plenty of allure, you might consider a few nights inside this allegedly haunted inn.
There's something happening here. Doll eyes, doll mouth, doll legs.
This next story was sent in to us by our friend Paul, our UK correspondent. Now and then, people reach out for my help as they believe they are living in a haunted house. Most of the time, I only need to provide advice over the phone, and on extremely rare occasions, my attendance might be required. In early 2018, while relaxing at home one evening, my phone rang. It was a call from a lady who lives in Hampshire and was desperate for my help. On her request, her identity remains hidden. After a lengthy telephone conversation, I started to think this might be one of the cases I needed to attend. I asked her to log the activity and report back to me. After a period of time, and as suspected, the activity had increased, and I knew I needed to attend as soon as possible. I visited the property the same week to get a feel for it, to see how bad the reported activity was, and to help understand what help was needed. In my opinion, the moment I step over the threshold of any haunted location, spirits are aware of my intent, so I wasn't expecting to see or hear any activity at all. My client started to show me around the property, showing the upstairs, where she experiences most of the activity. As we entered one of the bedrooms, she began to explain what she experiences in that room. It sounds like the beds are being dragged across the floor, banging against the walls. Another time, it sounded like someone had lifted the beds and dropped them from a height, crashing back down, hitting the floor hard. But when I come to check it out, nothing had moved, and nothing was out of place. As I'm standing there listening, the lights in the room start to flicker. Apparently, the lights had never done that before. We then proceeded into another bedroom. "I'm here," my client says. "In here, I can feel someone leaning in my face when I'm trying to sleep, and I pray to God they will go away. I used to read in bed before I went to sleep, but I kept getting distracted by seeing dark shadows moving out of the corner of my eye. But when I turn to look, I never see anything. Honest to God, I think I'm going mad." My client continues to take me to each room, explaining the different types of activity she experiences. "And in this room," she points to a doll she had named Lucy, "I swear that doll is haunted." I asked why. She said, "I've lived in this house for over 30 years and never experienced anything like this, and I don't believe in ghosts. Last year I asked my son to redo my bathroom for me, as I don't like my bath where it is. I wanted it moved. He had to lift up the floorboards to get to the pipes, and he saw a plastic bag. Thinking it was rubbish, he pulled it out but realized it had something in it. He thought he found a bag of hidden cash, but inside was that doll. It wasn't long after that things started to happen. My kids think I'm mad because I said to them before now, I'm sure I didn't leave that doll there." Just before I left, I explained to my client that I'll return with my team to help and reassure her that she wasn't going mad and not to worry, as it will only make things worse. What my client was unaware of at the time was that while she was showing me around, I saw movement, shadows walking through the hallway out of the corner of my eye, and kept hearing a lady's faint voice talking, and all from inside the same room the doll named Lucy was in. Shortly after, I returned to the property with my team, and we dealt with the unsettling activity. It did kick off a little towards the end. Crashes and bangs could be heard in the front room from the other side of the door. The door started to vibrate and shake so aggressively that flakes of paint started to fall away from the door frame. The door handle started to shake and move as if someone was desperately trying to open the door from the other side. We took a deep breath, and as we opened the door, we were confronted by a dark mass and sudden gust of energy which pushed past us and raced upstairs. I followed the dark mass upstairs, and as I expected, there was a portal in the same room the doll was in, and this was where the spirit was headed. Once I was convinced the spirit had left, I went downstairs. "Cup of tea, anyone?" We went to the kitchen to find every single cabinet door and drawer open. I find it hard to believe that a spirit would deliberately walk around a kitchen opening cabinet doors. My belief is that a sudden burst of energy so great can cause a vacuum effect when a spirit crosses from one realm to another, and this was the reason why this happened. After the evening's events settled, we said our goodbyes, but my client asked me to hang on and run upstairs to get the doll. "Take Lucy with you." While handing me the doll, begging me to take it with me, she was adamant the doll was the cause of the haunting. I took the doll, not believing in it, but I knew it would help my client move on. I planned to throw the doll in a bin, one that wasn't mine or anywhere near my house. I have always been terrified of dolls to the point where I can't touch them because they freak me out. Like some people have a fear of clowns. But by the time I got home, I wanted to keep her and give her a good home for some strange reason. Since having Lucy in my house, I have seen odd things out of the corner of my eye and experienced unfamiliar noises. But I have my eye on her and continue to do protection. I tell Lucy as long as she behaves herself, I will take her out on investigations with me so she can have fun. Just what kind of paranormal investigator is this? Their name isn't listed, so I don't know.
That's a pretty good theory about the energy from the ghost sucking those doors like a vacuum. Way back on episode 10, I was talking about how whenever we first bought this double-wide trailer, Hey, and like Art Bell, I have a double-wide trailer. I was in the bathroom working on the pipes and the sink and working order and stuff. And I heard a big slam in the kitchen floor. Like somebody just jumped with all their might. Like a ton of bricks falling down in the floor or something. But in these double-wides, you can hear like every footstep. Someone walking into another bedroom or something. You just hear the footsteps through the whole house. I was working on the pipes in the bathroom, and I came out and all the kitchen cabinet doors were open, and they hadn't been open when I went into the bathroom. So that story kind of made me think of that, because like a vacuum from the spirit's energy sucked all those doors open, maybe. Good theory. How about a haunted bookstore? In Detroit, Michigan, there's no shortage of possible hauntings. In fact, you probably expect many places there to be haunted, given the amount of ruined buildings, abandoned factories, and the murder rate of almost a murder per day. The most notable haunting in Detroit's retail sector, however, seems to be the ghost that haunts John T. King's used and rare books. The store, standing 4 floors tall, housing over 1 million books, separated into 900 categories, is also home to a couple of ghosts. The first ghost is reportedly a man who killed himself on the 3rd floor of the glove factory in which the bookstore is now housed, after suffering heartbreak from being rejected by a coworker. He is supposedly responsible for many sightings, cold spots, and echoing footstep-like sounds in the building, and was authenticated by a psychic. The second ghost was acquired alongside many books bought from the estate of a murder-suicide victim. Although not dangerous, the ghost reportedly annoys employees by generating cold spots and knocking scores of books off the shelves. That could get annoying.
Let's call this one The Boy Under the Floorboards. Tucked away in Fentress County in northeast Tennessee, you'll find the sleepy little town of Jamestown, Tennessee. Like other small towns around the volunteer state, Jamestown is said to be home to a dark secret that still haunts an old schoolhouse. In the early 20th century, a student at Pine Haven finished his classes and decided to use the restroom before walking home. As he was wrapping up and washing his hands, an older boy who was considered to be the school bully snuck up behind him and playfully shoved him into the mirror. Unfortunately for the younger boy, he banged his head on the glass and then lost his balance on the slippery floor before crashing headfirst into the sink. As the child lay lifeless on the floor with blood pouring out of his head, the bully panicked and used his pocket knife to pull up boards in the floor. He then quickly rolled the body into the ground and reattached the flooring. This is where it gets interesting. It's been said the child was dead as soon as he hit the floor. But some say the boy died from exposure after being trapped under the building all night. It's also disputed when or if the young boy's remains were discovered. It's said that his remains were discovered a few days later after the teacher began to notice the smell of decaying flesh from down the hall. Others say his body is still down there. The only thing that is known for sure is that the little boy is still haunting the old abandoned schoolhouse. According to local lore, if you go into the bathroom and look in the mirror, you will see the spirit of the little boy behind you.
And here's another one from Virginia. Gadsby's Tavern is a famously historic building located on Royal Street in Old Town Alexandria, Virginia. It has served as an economic, social, and political central point for the city, and therefore has gained an impressive reputation. Guests are still invited to dine inside the historic tavern, which has greeted many a traveler over the past 200 plus years it's been in operation. What's fascinating is that Gadsby's Tavern was not actually the first tavern built on the site. That designation belongs to Mason Ordinary, which was constructed in 1749. Needless to say, this extensive history lends itself to quite a few haunted legends. One of the most famous ghosts is that of the female stranger. Legend has it this anonymous woman died in room 8 of the tavern, which once included rooms for travelers. Many diners and employees of the restaurant have occasionally seen the woman wander through the tavern. She appears in the form of a beautiful young woman, only to vanish right before your eyes. Of course, the restaurant embraces its historic past and even any hint of the paranormal. Whether you happen to encounter one of Virginia's most famous ghosts or not, you're bound to enjoy dining like it's the 18th century. And if you're curious to learn more about the female stranger, you can visit her grave site at St. Paul Cemetery. Have you ever heard of a haunted gazebo? Me neither until now. The Moorish-style Springhouse Gazebo in Eden Park was designed by architect Cornelius M. Foster and completed in 1904, making it the oldest structure in the Cincinnati Parks system. In 1925, popular Cincinnati attorney George Remus was indicted for bootlegging and ordered to serve a 2-year federal prison sentence. While he was serving time, his wife, Imogene, started an affair with former undercover Prohibition agent Franklin Dodge. The pair liquidated her husband's assets, sold his distillery, attempted to have him deported, and even hired a hitman to try to murder him. When George returned from prison, Imogene filed for divorce. On October 6, 1927, on the way to the courthouse to finalize the divorce, George had his driver run his wife's car off the road near the gazebo, jumped out, and fatally shot her in the stomach. George represented himself in court and was ultimately acquitted in one of the first successful uses of the insanity defense, having claimed that he'd been driven mad by his wife's adultery, thievery, and betrayal. Legend has it that the ghost of Imogene Remus now haunts the gazebo and nearby Mirror Lake.
Here's a UFO report out of Zimbabwe. In November 1996, this author of this story, Cynthia Hind, went to Bindura, some 90 kilometers from Harare, to interview a 17-year-old boy named Lloyd Karambakwa, a student at the secondary school, and this is what he told her. At between 1 and 1:30 a.m. on March 6, 1996, he woke up, and because he knew it would be quiet at that hour, he decided to do some studying for his exams. While thus engaged, he heard a clicking sound, not unlike a telephone dialing, except there were no telephones in this area. It continued for several minutes. So Lloyd decided to check out what it could be. He opened the front door and looked outside. He could hear the sound coming from up the road, and when he glanced in that direction, he witnessed something very strange. He quickly went outside and hid behind a hedge to get a better view. He was able to observe a small figure about 1 meter high with a head like a rugby ball, dressed all in white overalls. On its back, the creature had a small satchel, attached to which was an aerial with a flashing red light. Lloyd was terrified. He told me he was asphyxiated with fear, and ran back into the house, jumped into bed, and covered himself with the blankets. He slept fitfully for the rest of the night. At 6 o'clock the next morning, he went to look where the creature had walked and found several footprints, which he could not identify and which he attributed to the creature. When he arrived at school, he told his friends about seeing a ghost in the night, but one of his friends suggested that it was a UFO. Lloyd is now under the impression that the creature is called a UFO. Opposite Lloyd's house is a teaching center guarded at night by a security firm. My inquiries led me to one of their guards, a woman named Kumbadzai, who had been on duty at the center when she saw what she called a ghost. She was so disturbed by this event that she had found herself another job elsewhere. Kumbadzai told me that when she heard clicking sounds and been frightened, she had hidden behind a wall and seen a figure in white. It passed her twice, and the second time, the figure had been covered in rainbow colors. I don't know. Ghost? UFO? Aliens? What do you think this little fella was?
The Moonville Tunnel by Abby Krutschker. Thanks, Abby. Is the castle haunted? This is a question we get asked quite a bit here in Ravenwood, and the answer, we think, is no. Though the castle itself may not be haunted, Ravenwood can boast to being located near one of Ohio's top haunting sites, the Moonville Tunnel. Just about a 30-minute drive from the castle in the wildwoods of Vinton County lays the abandoned Moonville Tunnel. The tunnel was part of a railroad that was constructed in 1856 to transport coal through southeastern Ohio. The town of Moonville was populated almost entirely by coal miners who worked at the nearby Hope Furnace. This iron furnace, rumored to be haunted as well, was used to make weapons for the Civil War. Sadly, by the early 1900s, modern advances in coal mining had made the town all but obsolete. Now taken over by the elements, Moonville no longer exists, and the railway tracks have been almost entirely removed. But you can still visit the old Moonville Cemetery, and of course, the tunnel. That is, as long as you aren't afraid of ghosts. So who haunts the now vacant Moonville Tunnel? According to local legend, the ghost is that of a railroad worker who was crushed by an oncoming train in the spring of 1859. A newspaper article from the MacArthur Democrat dated March 31st, 1859 reads, "A brakesman was fatally injured when the wheels passing over and grinding to a shapeless mass the greater part of one of his legs." Most who claim to have sighted the ghost of Moonville Tunnel say that he carries a lantern and is sometimes seen as a hovering orb of light. Orb? At least 4 other people were reported to have been killed at Moonville Tunnel as well, although the details vary. Some legends claim that Moonville was struck by a plague and quarantined, and that the ghosts are those killed by the epidemic. Others state that the ghost is that of a pregnant woman struck by a train, and still others claim that it was an 8-foot tall man who was struck. However, none of these legends are quite as popular as that of the railway worker. And that's about all the spooky stories we have for our Haunted World Chapter 4. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. God bless you.